job interview is one of the most anxiety-provoking situations most people can find themselves in, even when they go to plan. But what happens when you have your worst interview ever? Our guests share their worst interviews ever in the hope that you will take something from their mistakes to have a more successful interview outcome. Some of the stories are horrific and some are just downright embarrassing. Let's join our host, Kevin O'Reilly, the interview skills coach with over 25 years' experience in the fields of coaching and recruitment. Let's welcome our guests to the show.
Today we have on the show Ruth Young. Ruth is a chartered digital marketer, professional with over 20 years of experience in social media advertising, training and strategy development. Having supported more than 400 organisations across various sectors, Ruth excels in crafting impactful paid campaigns tailored to her clients' needs. As the president of Lisburn Chamber of Commerce, a mentor and a mother of two, Ruth brings both expertise and real-world insights to her work. Let's all welcome Ruth to the show. You're very welcome, Ruth.
Thank you, Kevin. It's great to be here.
That's great. Where do we find you today, Ruth?
I'm in my house. I live sort of west of Lisburn.
Oh, okay. And for those that are listening further afield, Lisburn is just outside Belfast in Northern Ireland.
Yep. Yeah, so maybe about 25 minutes drive outside of Belfast.
Great. Ruth, you have so much experience in your field, as well as being the president of Lisburn Chamber of Commerce. So this is going to be a very, very real good peek behind the curtain for lots of our listeners today. So before we get started, listen, I've known you for a while and I know that I've learned a lot from behind that curtain. But before we even get started, I want our listeners just to get to know you ever so slightly. Okay, and it's one of these awkward questions that sometimes you're asked at warm-ups and meetups whenever you get out into a load of people and they don't know each other. And it's just to share a hobby or a hidden skill or talent that you might have with us all, Ruth.
I do British Sign Language. I'm learning sign language for the past 2.5 years. I'm learning level 3 of Northern Irish British Sign Language. Did you know that there's lots of different regions of sign language within the UK alone? So yeah, there's different signs for different things in different parts of the UK. So anyway, it's something that I am learning. I've probably shared a bit about it online, but if you want a hidden skill, I also play guitar, and I don't do a lot of stuff about that online. So now when I say play, it's not like a very strong term. There's been the loosest possible way of saying play anything. But I play and I enjoy for myself.
Well, do you know what? That's important. That's important.
Yep.
As long as it's something that you enjoy. And I didn't know that about you, Ruth.
About the guitar or the BSL?
Yeah, no, the BSL, yes, but the guitar I didn't know.
There you go.
Is there any favorites songs you like to play?
I am a bit of a country music fan, so like I play a bit of Dixie Chicks and a bit of Johnny Cash, things like that.
Well, that's two things I didn't know about you today.
Country music.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much for that. And Ruth, the reason that we're here today on this show is to discuss your worst job interview ever. Now, give us a little tiny sneak peek of what that might be. Now, don't be giving too much away. Just a little tiny sneak peek.
Well, when you first asked me that question a few weeks back, I thought of two different scenarios, and one was as the interviewer, where it was very difficult to get the answers out of the candidate, and then the other was as the interviewee, where I had problems with my eyes and was at casualty that morning. So when I went to the interview that afternoon, I couldn't really see what I was looking at very well.
Okay, that's enough. That's enough. Keep that for the end. You can decide which one that you're going to pick coming closer to the end. But like we do with all our guests on this show, we like to hear a little bit more about them. You know, their journey, where they've come from so far. But we also like to know about their highs and their lows. So Ruth, in your vast career, I'm sure you've had lots of highs and lows within that career. But we would love for you to share a real high point within your career so far.
I think when I was at a point of going self-employed, I thought it's going to be such a long time before I'm able to replicate the income that I was earning as an employee. So the high point for me was getting to a point of matching my income. But then the really high point was surpassing what that original income was as well. So, um, and with that, I mean, being self-employed means that you're interviewing all the time for work, so
Yeah.
it really showed me that I was of value and I was contributing something that was of value, especially with lots of repeat customers coming again and
Mm.
again each month for different pieces of work. So that high point for me was feeling I do have something to contribute and I can do it well.
We're always selling, Ruth, aren't we, as entrepreneurs?
Mm-hmm.
Even when we're not on work mode, we're always selling because it just becomes who you are and is part of who you are. And those conversations, as you quite rightly say, whenever you're out there speaking with potential clients, that in essence, you're interviewing, you're selling. Either you're being interviewed or you're interviewing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And quite often you're having those conversations without realizing that you're being interviewed or interviewing at the
Yeah.
same time. So they're just conversations that they could go somewhere and they might not, and that's fine too. But the fact that you're having those conversations and seeing it come to work down the line, is proof in the pudding that, that I was doing something right and for other self-employed folk, the same sort of thing.
Yeah, I was actually listening to a gentleman this morning who had built up a business in printing, and he had said that this gentleman came in, ordered one t-shirt with a print on it, and it costs £7 or £8. And he says, Kevin, I treated him like he was ordering £50,000 worth of stuff. He says, because that's how I like to treat my customers. He says, but the guy returned in 3 days' time and ordered £20,000 worth of print and embroidery from him.
Wow, fantastic.
But it
And he's
just
just
shows
left
you.
that impression so well, and it's part of it's not just, how you dress, it's how you treat people and leaving that lasting impression to make you the person they come to. I've had people who I've connected with on LinkedIn, for example, and like we've just had brief conversations, bump into each other at events, but this person came to me that I'm thinking of about 5 or 6 years after we had connected, and we hadn't spoke for a couple of years because of the pandemic and things.
Mm.
But he came back to me at that point and said, "I need to do some work for me." And I was like, "Oh, fantastic!" So those conversations that started all that time left an impression, and he remembered it, and at the time that he needed the help then. So,
And that's it, isn't it? Sometimes it is just about timing, and we can't always be at the right time
mhm.
because 4 or 5 years later, that gentleman came back to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's getting far better results now with what he's got done by me than he did the previous person. So
Of
I've
course he
I've
did,
left an
Ruth.
even better impression now.
Well, that's it, isn't it? That's it. And you said it earlier when you were saying about the repeat business. This is how you know that you're doing a good job, is to have that repeat business because a repeat business is the lifeblood of any business. It's not
Hmm.
just that first sale or the one-off sale to that one-off person. It's the repetition, constantly coming back for the same thing.
Hmm.
So Ruth, you must be doing something
Absolutely.
right.
I must be. So that's definitely been a high point. And I have one client who has been with me right from the very start, which is one that I hold very dearly and I treasure. So it's been lovely to see that they've stayed with me and value the work that I'm doing.
Ruth, funny you say that. I have exactly that one client myself.
Yeah.
That one client has been with me from the very, very beginning and give me that opportunity to really be that entrepreneur I wanted to be.
Hmm.
And we do work maybe 2 or 3 times a year for them every year. And it's
Excellent.
fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah. It's a great feeling when people
It
keep
is.
coming back again and again. So, yep.
It is. It's fantastic. It's fantastic. But now, listen, there must have been a time that, for the sake of balance, was a bit lower. It was a bit of one of those moments where something pivotal happened and you thought, this can't go on any longer. I need to change something. I need to do something different.
Mm.
What would that be?
I can think of a few. And one is actually relating to becoming self-employed, but I'm going to go for a different scenario, which is when I was in employment. I worked in the nonprofit sector for a long time, and as you know, in the nonprofit sector, funding is always a big issue.
Yeah.
And this one year in this job, the funding was cut by half, and it just meant that a lot of jobs had to go. One of those was mine, but there was a bit of restructuring, and I was offered an alternative as part of that. So I was made redundant, but offered an alternative, which I took. And then the funding went for it as well. So I was made redundant again, offered an alternative on a maternity cover post. Um, And then there was a threat that that job was going to be made redundant as well anyway. So I just thought I need to get out of this particular space and pivot into something slightly different. So while that was more um, in one niche of nonprofit sector, I moved into a different niche within the nonprofit and a different job altogether. Um, which was actually a maternity leave post, but it gave me a bit of headspace to work out what the next step was going to be.
Yeah.
And then I ended up going back to them again after the next job as well. So while it was a low point in terms of that redundancy, and I thought, where am I going? What am I doing? Um, and that job was directly after a previous job that had redundancy as well. And I just thought it's going to be redundancy, redundancy, redundancy all the time now.
Yeah.
So that was a low point, but trying to work out, what skills I had to transfer into other niches or what experience or what connections I had to use was really important at that time for me to build myself up again, grow my confidence
Yeah.
again, not feel like it was something that I had done either, because it very much
Yeah.
felt like an attack that I had been made redundant because I had done something wrong. It was just the funding and it was just the way that it
Yeah.
was. But that was hard to accept whenever I was the only person at home and I was bringing in money to pay for my house and my
Yeah.
just I was the money, I was the source of running everything in our house, in my house,
Yeah.
sorry. Um, so there was that sort of threat of thinking I'm going to lose my house, I'm going to lose my job, I'm going to lose all this other stuff. But looking to use that as like, where's the silver lining here? What are the opportunities that I can lean into instead? If I have to do something different, what would it be? And that led me into a slightly different niche within the nonprofit sector at
Yeah.
that time.
And I think that word redundancy, it's not a great word because you
No.
can almost take it personal. And I think you did say, you alluded to that it felt almost very personal. I too was
Mm.
made redundant, and at the time I had to facilitate the redundancy of 651 other individuals, as well as make myself redundant at the same time. And it was a very hard pill to swallow. But like
Mm.
yourself, lessons were learned and opportunities were taken. And that's why we're
Mhm.
both sitting here now, both running our own businesses successfully for many years. And
Mhm.
that's what I would consider to be a successful business if you're running your business for many years and having lots of repeat business.
Yeah, and I guess you're not solely reliant on one thing either, then being one source of income. And even if
Hmm.
you are in an employment situation, thinking about other sources of income to help, bolster that or increase that or, have a variety of incomes in case something doesn't go well in one place.
Yeah, because there's no jobs for life anymore.
No,
No. There used to be,
no.
but I don't think that's the case. Again, reflecting on a conversation I had this morning within a local council, they were talking that there was a lot of restructuring. And again, even that term, restructuring, we all know what that means. It's
Hmm.
a very soft way of saying that we have to move things around and some people will not be here at the end.
Hmm.
And it's extremely unfortunate. It's extremely unfortunate. And we do
Yeah.
tend to find that more and more nowadays, more and more. But I learned lots from that experience. And I'm sure you did too.
Yeah, and I'm 100% certain that I grew as a person and became more confident in myself, even though it had really knocked my confidence. I'm 100% sure that it built my confidence back up again in terms of feeling more assured as to who I am, what I wanted to do, the direction I wanted to go, what some of my non-negotiables were for jobs going
Hmm.
forwards and stuff. What were the things that I really wanted to achieve and do, and what were the things that I could compromise on within that.
Yeah. And were you the president of the Lisburn Chamber of Commerce then?
No,
No.
no. I've only become the president of Lisburn Chamber of Commerce January a year ago.
Okay.
So I've only been in the role about a year, and yeah, so I've been loving it. Did that as part of my self-employment, got involved in the chamber as a volunteer to support some of the local businesses because I felt that I was strongly supported, especially as a startup.
Hmm.
And I also just wanted to get to connect with more local businesses, so it was a great way to do that. Um, so getting involved with the executive committee a couple of years ago, then led to me being nominated as the next president, and here I am now in the middle of my 2, maybe 3 year term. We'll see how it goes.
I think it's very relevant. I think, wasn't it President Trump is now in power? from
Uh-huh.
today or yesterday, I think,
In
for
the
those
last
who
24
probably
hours,
know the date.
probably.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. So it's I think he's in for his next 4 year term, and you're into 1 year into your 3 year term. Not that I'm comparing you to Trump, Ruth, by the way.
No, no, don't play so. No, typically Lisburn Chamber Presidents do 2 years. You can do more if you want, but that's why I say I'm about halfway through my two, maybe three. We'll see how it goes.
But
If they want me back again.
but you would not have done this had you still been in employment. Would that be fair to say?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I wouldn't have got involved in a business networking group to that extent to
Mm,
be able to say, yes, I could take on that role. It has been a lot of voluntary hours, but it also has been something that has helped to build my profile, build my confidence, build connections. It's
yeah,
been a marketing opportunity for me
yeah,
to get more work, and I have got more work out of it. But I think a lot of the personal development that I've seen through it has been really important, and brings a lot to the table when I'm having conversations with people. So, like even last week, talking to someone about they needed to connect with someone else. Oh, I know them because of this, and I can put you in touch with them because of the chamber connection that I have
yeah,
now. So, being able to help people more has always been part of what I love to do, and if I can bring that into the work that I do, it also helps them to remember who I am when it comes to the time they need my support professionally as well.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
so yeah, it's
And
ticked a lot of boxes for me.
yeah, and it sort of feeds everything. It feeds your work. It feeds your confidence. It feeds everything. So, do you think it was a great opportunity for you?
Sorry, I'm just glad you didn't say ego there, but
No, no, not at all. But yes, the ego potentially too. Um, but do you think that was a great opportunity for you to be asked to be president of that?
I was hugely humbled. I didn't think or expect that it would be me at all because there were others on the committee that I thought would be far more suitable for the role, prepared for the role, had been on the committee for longer than me. Um, so it felt like a huge honor that everybody had nominated me for it. So
Yeah,
I felt, like I say, very humbled and honored to take it on then. It almost felt like something that I couldn't refuse because people had
yeah.
so much faith and trust in me to do it. Or else they just saw the word gullible tattooed across my head and, and
No, I
thought,
don't
we'll
think
give
so.
her a go too. But no, in all seriousness, I did feel very much valued and appreciated, and I really appreciated the opportunity then to step up and contribute a bit more then.
Well, just talking about value and valued, they must have seen something in you that they really liked, and they thought, do you know what? That's the person we want for us to be represented by. So if there's a value you believe that you have that sits above the all others, what value would you say that is?
When I first took on the role, I joked that it was about me having a big presence on like LinkedIn and Facebook, and I was very visible, and they just wanted someone who would promote the chamber a bit more. But no, that I knew that was a joke in my head. Um, but I think the value that I brought was that I'm quite personable and I relate to people and I communicate more with people. I'm all about collaboration too. I love collaborating and connect with people, finding ways to be mutually beneficial, and things as well. So, um, stepping into this role has been really important for getting to know our stakeholders and supporters in terms of sponsors and things, or getting to know our members as well, and
Yeah.
feeling like how can we all move forward together and support each other to make it all work better for everybody. It's almost like being a counselor without having to be a counselor at the same time.
Without all the rubbish stuff that comes along with being a
The,
counselor?
the the politics of dealing with, bin collections and things like that, but and you do get some of the negative complaints with that as well. But at the same time, we're trying to work out ways to productively move forward together then. And
Yeah.
because I'm quite a collaborative person, that's maybe what they'd seen within me, and I'm good at networking and connecting some of those dots.
Yeah. But there must be a value that you hold dear to you that you look for in other people when you're out and about. T- Talk to us a wee bit about that.
Um, it maybe comes back to the collaborative approach again, and I often find there's people who want to just take advantage
Mm,
and just use and abuse something. But the people I connect with better are the people who want to do the give and take thing. And it's not just about getting a hand up. Now that said, I am also very supportive of people who do need a hand up. and do need a bit of help, because I was that person, especially when I started my business. It was great to have people who had been there before advising on like accounting software, or think about, some cash flow planning, or, whatever. So all that stuff, or even go to them to talk about your website ideas and stuff, so things like that. That was really useful at a time when I was like, this is a lot to take on, didn't know what I was doing completely. So I'm always very supportive of people who do need a bit of advice. But then you also see someone that comes back around as well, where they'll go, okay, I need something from you now as well to help me, now that you've helped
Yeah.
me. So it might not be it might not be that I'm able to support them at that stage, but it could come around at another stage. So that sense of give and take and mutually supporting each other in whatever way that you can. Even if it is buying services off each other, if it's just like making an introduction, if it's just going for a coffee and being a sounding board for something.
Yeah.
So that value of um building other people up, but also not being taken advantage of, and seeing some of those
Mm.
red flags for being valued within the relationship.
It's a hard line, isn't it?
Mm,
That not being taken advantage of, especially when you think I could help, and they're not in it for that mutually beneficial partnership. It's more a one-sided
yes,
take.
and it can take a few bad experiences to see the red flags the next time and go, this isn't going to be a situation that's going to benefit me at all, even now or in the long run.
Mm,
Um, and being brave enough to say, look, I'm sorry, I can't help you at this time, but I'll point you in the direction of this
yeah,
information, and then you do what you want to with that.
yeah. Well,
So,
that's good, isn't it, though? That's good because it's not like you're completely closing them down. It's like you're giving boundaries, and you're prioritizing your own sanity, for want of a better word, because
absolutely.
you can be taken advantage of in any walk of life. And if people know that you're doing this and doing that, and you've been in business for X amount of years,
hmm
they can try and take advantage of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then if you're the kind of person who is a giver, it can be very easy that you're taken advantage of as well. So it's
Yeah,
paying attention to some of those previous learnings and not repeating them again and again and again.
yeah. Well, I suppose it's like interviewing, isn't it? It's once
hmm
once you become an interviewer and you've done it a couple of hundred times, you start to see the red flags as and when they walk in the door, or even before that.
hmm
Sometimes when you hear them in the foyer, or if they're walking in. But there must be some times where you thought, if you were sitting on that interview panel, this doesn't work for me. These people, no way. That's absolutely not. You may be conscious of what it is that isn't going to work for you, but sometimes you can be unconscious of that. But give me your three top red flags about interview candidates coming in and you think that's a no-no for me, an absolute non-negotiable no-no. What would they be, Ruth?
I mean, you sort of talked a little bit there about the gut feeling, isn't there? Um, and it's maybe hard to articulate, but if there's someone sitting in front of you for a job and you have this feeling that they're not going to integrate with the culture of the
Mm,
organization, and I don't mean that in regards to like ethnicity and culture around that, but I mean like the culture of the workplace, in terms of, this is a supportive workplace. We do stuff together. We might even socialize together. If you don't feel they're going to fit in there, then it's going to be difficult, not only for your current employees, but the new employee as well. It's going to work
yeah.
both ways. So you're trying to, it's almost like dating, isn't it? and and you're like the arranged marriage kind of person. You're counseling and putting these people all together to do jobs and stuff. But you want to have a team that's going to gel well,
Yeah.
and relate really well. And like every environment's going to be slightly different or have different personalities and things. Are those personalities all going to work? Now, I'm not saying that someone should be going for a job and thinking, oh, I need to make sure that I'm going to be best friends with Kevin or something, So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, or that I'm not going to get the job because I don't have the right personality type or something like that. But it's one thing that helps to make the job work, not only for the current business, but also the new employee, and making them feel integrated and valued, and they settle in really well and everything as well. Um, so other things are big no-nos are the timekeeping thing, and this can go both ways. So I've had people who have arrived at interviews late,
Mm-hmm.
which is never a good idea. But I've also had people who've arrived at interviews 45 minutes early. and
Hmm.
they've almost just felt like a spare part sitting in the waiting room, and you feel like I need to give them tea. Are you okay there? They'll be with you soon. And it's this kind of hospitality thing that just feels like they're more of a burden than they need to be. They could have been there 15 minutes early and that would have been ample.
Yeah.
So while it is impressive that they're there nice and early, just go to a coffee shop for that half hour and then come in, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
I think lots of people put that almost down to as an interviewer, put that down to poor time management.
mhm,
Because like you've just said, you think you're in hospitality and have to just ensure that they're okay and they're
mhm,
seen. And I get it. Some people have to get the bus or some people have to walk and they want to leave
absolutely.
lots of ample time to get there. But
Mhm,
there is that sweet spot. That 15 minutes is the sweet spot.
mhm.
It's not too much and
Yep.
it's too soon. And if there is something, yeah, be there half an hour, 45 minutes beforehand. Like you just said, go to a coffee shop, sit in your
Or
car, stand
yeah,
outside,
check your phone.
check your phone, do whatever, but stay out of the building as such.
Yep.
You're absolutely right. And what's your third one, Ruth? What's your third red flag?
Oh, I forgot that I didn't have a third one there. Um, Being appropriately dressed for the role. Now,
Oh,
a lot of people think that going to job interviews is about, for men, shirt and tie and all the rest of it, but there's some jobs that you don't wear a shirt and tie to ordinarily, and if you showed up to a job interview wearing shirt and tie, you'd be laughed at.
yeah,
So I'm thinking about the role in the industry and what is relevant and respectful, and showing that you respect yourself enough to look smart enough for that particular role. But I'll come back to
yeah.
that later on when we talk about the job interview that
Okay,
I'm
okay.
going to share.
The what I was always told when I was first going for interviews many years ago, Ruth, was that you dress for the job that you want,
Hmm.
and that made a lot of sense to me. You know,
Yeah, that makes sense.
you weren't turning
Absolutely.
up to a sports shop in a shirt and a tie,
Hmm.
to work on the till. You
Hmm.
weren't showing up to another fast food chain in a shirt and a tie. Now, when I say to students, I always say they should go in the uniform
Hmm.
because it's nice, clean, and tidy, and it's uniformed. But
Yeah.
they wouldn't necessarily turn up with a shirt and a tie for that type of interview. However,
Yeah.
it is still being taught in some of the schools that I go into that that is the case. They have to be shirt and tied. But it is quite an old-fashioned way of thinking.
Hmm.
But it's not even the case of you have to dress appropriately. And I liked how you used that word appropriately because it is
Hmm.
appropriate to use the word appropriately for the dress, the dress sense. And it is always very difficult as well, even for women. What should they
Hmm.
wear? What should they
Hmm.
wear? And a previous guest I had on the show here was a stylist, and she gave lots of really good advice. Lots of really good advice. You should listen out for it. It's Mary McGuigan.
Mary is phenomenal and knows her stuff, so I would totally trust
She
everything she
does.
says.
She does. She absolutely does. She's fantastic. And yeah, I even took a few little tips away from that myself for myself when we were out.
Mm.
One of her tips that she gave was for always have a pen, a very fashionable pen that matches your outfit.
There you go.
There you go. Indeed. I thought,
And
okay, it's the small details.
so what pen do you have now?
I have this beautifully black shiffer pen.
Mm. There
Yeah.
you go. You're still doing
And still
it.
do absolutely. What I do is around best practice. It's a study of
Mhm.
successful behaviors. It's understanding what works well and doing more
Mhm.
of them. And that, if you summed up life and you've lived till you're 80, well, that's potentially what you've been doing the whole time.
Yeah, yeah. I guess the thing with how you dress as well, you don't want to go in looking like a clone either. You want to express a bit of your personality while also being respectful to that business. And maybe Mary talked a bit
Absolutely.
about that. I need to go and watch hers. And get more tips myself. But yeah, it's about being respectful to the organization and to yourself. And you also said there about students going to interviews in their uniform. I
Yeah.
worked in McDonald's as one of my first jobs, and I went to that interview in my uniform.
Yeah.
Um, but then, like, I went to a grammar school, and I think most of the staff there didn't go to grammar school, so they probably judged me a little bit at the time as
Okay.
well, thinking, "Oh, she's a bit too highfalutin for here or something." So, so maybe even then I should have been going in something smart but casual at the same time. But it's weighing up according to reading the cues of the business and the style,
That's it.
and not the style, but like the type of business it is, and how the workwear is, and how you can maybe excel a little bit on that without putting people off and making them feel
Yeah.
like you're stepping above them or something.
And it's a difficult balance. It's not. It really is a difficult
Hmm.
balance. But
Hmm.
again, you know what is appropriate. You'd have to do a little bit of research to understand that, and you'd
Hmm.
have to probably look onto their social media. You'll have to go onto their website. You'll have to even ring the HR department just to find out what is appropriate for that, because everybody has a different opinion of what appropriate is.
Hmm.
And I think
Heck, you could
for
even go on to LinkedIn now and meet some of the employees of that organization and have a conversation
yeah,
with them. You
yeah,
know,
and
and say,
that's
what's it like
exactly
to
what you
work
should do.
there? And
Yeah.
yeah, get to know some of the people who work there and build some connections and say, look, I'm going for an interview. I would love some tips on the company or insights into the company as well. And do your research. It's not just about reading it on their website or seeing it in the job description anymore. You can get to contact these people directly, and have a conversation, and who knows, it might even help with your application process.
You're right. And that's exactly what I would suggest as well. Get on to LinkedIn, find those
Hmm.
people who work there and ask a question. And if they answer, great. If they don't, find somebody else and ask the same question. And if they answer, great.
Hmm.
And if they don't, find somebody else.
Yep.
I always remember hearing a quote about Tom Cruise. And do you remember the film he was doing? I think it was Mission Impossible, and he was in the Burj Khalifa, and he wanted to
Hmm.
do a specific stunt. And the stunt coordinator at the time says, "No, I don't think you should do that. It's very dangerous. No, I'm going to recommend you don't." So he sacked him, and he found another stunt coordinator who said,
You
"Yes,
would.
yes,
Uh-huh.
let's do that, and let's find a way of doing that."
Okay.
So that's
Yeah.
what you got to do, though. You got to keep pushing to find that one thing or that one person that was going to help and support. But again, it's almost like a job or starting your own business. You got to find that one thing that's going to do it for you, and you
Hmm.
want to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. Now,
Yes.
Ruth, over the years in your previous roles and even in your current roles, you would have been an employer and you would have sat on a lot of panels, to say the
Hmm.
least. There's bound to be a time when a candidate has walked into you and just went above and beyond, just above and beyond. You thought, "Wow." Do you know one of those moments where you just
Mm.
sit back and you go, "Wow, I wish I had a thought of that," because that's fantastic.
Mm.
Yeah. Did you ever have one of
Yeah.
those
So
moments?
yeah, now um this guy came in. It was for a youth work role back when I was in the nonprofit sector for a youth work role, and he came in. Like he had sent in his application, but he had brought in like a folder for each interview panel member. He had phoned ahead to see how many there were, and had made up these extra folders, and it had in them like photos of him actually doing youth work and evidencing some of the stuff that he had talked about in the interview or the application form, because you couldn't submit photos or anything. So he had done this little document and printed off enough to give to each panelist. And then he was able to, if you flick to page 5, you'll see when I did this, and he was able to talk about it and say, and that person in the photo, that's Kevin. He and I did this, and and that how I helped him to grow in this way and develop in this way. And then after that interview as well, he had emailed a little package of a couple of videos to help bolster some of the stuff that he talked about. And he said in the interview, I'm going to send a video actually to show you exactly what I did. And then he followed up as well. Now he followed up, he did get the job, but before we had offered him the job, he had followed up to say, look, if there's anything else that you need, just be in touch. Let me know if there's anything else to help with my application, or if you've got any further questions. I have to go through another interview if there needs to be, So it really took his time to show more interest in the job and in the
Hmm.
organization, and took pride in what he had to offer in that interview as well, and really helped to demonstrate it, which is sometimes doable when you're, well, it is doable when you're just explaining and describing things, but having those visuals really helped to enhance what he was talking about.
Absolutely. It makes a huge difference. And I believe that little technique is called the briefcase technique.
Mm, there you
There is
go.
a
I
name
didn't
for
even
it,
know that was a
yes.
thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's called the briefcase technique. It was developed in America where they used to go in to interviews with a briefcase and they'll have proposals already done out within the briefcase. It's all a little about creating that drama. Me picking the
Hmm.
briefcase up and opening the briefcase and taking the papers out and handing them out to everybody. Bit of a performance, and it's
Is it
memorable.
like a Dragon's Den kind of pitched kind of thing? Or
Almost, yeah. So it's almost like that, and you're given bits of paper out that people have in their hand. Then it becomes a kinesthetic thing. Then it becomes a visual thing because people are reading them. Then it becomes an
Mm,
auditory thing. So you're ticking all of the senses boxes.
yes.
That's a really smart way of doing it, and that's a fantastic example, by the way. a really
Mm.
fantastic example. And more
Mm-hmm.
people should do that, in my opinion, because 9 times out of 10, that works because
Mm-hmm.
people are not expecting that level. And see, when I do things like that, what always strikes me is I go, well, if this is how the person prepares for the interview, can you imagine how they will do in the role?
Absolutely. And that person did get the job and had been there for a long, long time,
Mm,
exceeding KPIs and all the rest of it, and exceeding expectations um and not to the point where he was being taken advantage of, but he would offer his time to do extra projects and was always keen to try new things as well. Um so yeah, definitely worthwhile doing those things. So yeah.
yeah, I'm a great believer in how we do something is how we do everything.
hmm
And that offends people sometimes because they go, well, sometimes I want to relax and I don't want to do anything. And I say, okay,
hmm
well, make it the best relaxation you've ever had. If you're going to relax, make it the best relaxation you've ever had. Just don't make it
hmm
mediocre. Make it the
Yep.
best relaxation you've ever had. As well as when you go to do something in business, make that the best thing you've ever done, ever. If you're going to
hmm
spend time with the family, make that the best time you spent with the family.
hmm
Just don't do things halfway.
I have. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not a great believer in that. And it was a lesson I learned many 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 years ago from a manager I used to work with, and he said that to
hmm
me, and that stuck with me for must be 25 years now. That just
Wow.
stuck with me. How you do something is how you do everything.
Love that.
It's
Love it.
such a double-edged saying because if you do things half-hearted, that's if you do one thing half-hearted, that's how most things go. And in the same sense, it is very hard to be around people who don't believe the same thing
Mm.
because it comes out in what they do every day
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
how they behave every day and how they act every day and how they deal and speak with you every day. It comes out like that. But that person that
Mm.
got that job and has stayed there, well, that's proof. The proof's in the pudding there.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So there you go.
Fantastic. Okay, Ruth, thanks for that. We are going to move on to our quick fire round. Okay, for
Oh,
for newbies to the show, this is where we will fire questions at Ruth quite quickly, and she only has to answer yes, no, or pass. That's yes, no, or pass. Okay, Ruth, you
okay.
ready?
Let's do it.
Is it acceptable to wear pajama bottoms to a Zoom interview?
Maybe.
Yes, no, or pass, Ruth.
Yes.
Is it okay to bribe the interviewers?
No.
Is it wise to ask the interviewer for a selfie together at the end?
Oh, oh, okay. I'm gonna say no, but I'll come back to it later on.
Should a candidate smile during the interview?
Yes.
Should you answer the first question with a dramatic pause for effect?
No.
Should women wear high heels to an interview?
No.
Is it acceptable to ask the interviewer how much they make?
No.
Should you high five the interviewer at the end?
No.
Should a candidate swear during an interview?
Pass.
And is it acceptable to bring your mum to the interview for moral support?
Yes.
Okay.
Some of these have very big like dependencies on different scenarios and stuff. And the only reason I'm saying yes to that one is that I had a candidate come in a wheelchair and they needed, help for navigating transport and stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
so the mum came with her to help her.
Yeah.
So there are certain scenarios it is. Some scenarios leave mum at home.
Yeah. Yeah. And I agree. The yes no maybe is a really restrictive way of answering these questions.
Yeah.
However, the reason that I ask these questions to every guest that comes on is because I am asked these questions at least once a week by my private clients. At least once a week.
Wow. About selfies and everything.
Absolutely.
So I mean the selfie thing I was on the fence with because like I remember watching an interview and one of the guys was a fairly well-known entrepreneur interviewing on this panel with all these other people to interview this person. And at the end, they're like, I'm really sorry. I've just admired you all my life. Can I get a selfie before I go? And I felt that that was appropriate because he was a
Yes.
well-known person. But for most cases, it's not going to be like, can I get a selfie with the chief executive of, Deloitte or
Fr-
whatever it is?
From a LinkedIn post.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Now that's a bit different as well. So context is
I, th-
always a key
I
thing.
think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. There are some of them there that is context, context bound. Even is it okay to bribe the interviewer? Okay, if I was
Hmm.
to say to you, uh, there was a candidate that brought in a particular type of coffee because whenever they'd done their research, they realized that this particular organization loved this particular coffee and loved to try new local coffees. And this person brought in a bag of their local coffee because they knew that.
Okay.
So technically, you could claim that as a bribe because they got the job. Now, that's not just the reason they got the job. They were the best candidate for the role, but that technically would be seen as a bribe.
I know I might almost, if that was me, say, look, I know about this great local brand. I'd love to get you some to try, but I'll send it at a later date,
I'll, I'll,
and
I'll
send it
send
as a
whenever I get the
follow-up or
job.
something.
Yeah.
No, well, I mean, you could just say, I'll hear from you in due course and send it on, or bring it in on your first day or something, not saying that that's when you're going to bring it, but you could still send it on regardless. Say, like, I'm going to send it, but I wouldn't bring it to the interview, is probably my stance on that.
Okay. Well, they did, and they got the job. I'm not say that that was because of that, but there you go.
Fair play to them. Fair play. I wouldn't be as brass necked myself, but
Those questions are very, very difficult sometimes to answer, aren't they? Even the
Mm.
one that you passed on about the swearing. I would be interested to understand why you passed on that one.
Yeah, just because I had someone I interviewed before and they swore in a question, but it wasn't because they were angry. They were really passionate about the thing. And like, I'm really sorry, I didn't mean to swear that. I'm so excited about this as a thing. And so it can be appropriate if you give the context to it as well and say, look, I'm really sorry. It's not, I'm so excited and normally I don't, whatever. So they kind of made their apologies, realized it wasn't appropriate, so to
Hmm.
speak. But then, there's some workplaces where people swear all day, every day, or maybe like in, I don't want to label or whatever, but like in trades, for example, or, so there's different industries where swearing just is a thing and it's just
Yeah.
part of the everyday culture and community that's there. So you kind of have to read the audit. And maybe it's even a case of maybe the panel have swore already and you get the vibe that, okay, well, it's all right to
Yeah.
throw in the odd word here, but still being respectful to them as the people who have the job to offer you. You know, it's
Well,
not like
that's
you're
it.
not like you're calling them a bleep and bleep bleep bleep, you
And you can hear what Ruth really said in the uncut version of the over 18 version, okay, everybody?
the new explicit interview skills coach podcast.
But you're right, Ruth. You're absolutely right. There are some industries where it's not that it's expected, it's
Hmm.
just a way of being, and that's it, and it's fine.
Yeah.
And
It's
again,
just the
that's
norm.
true. Yeah, it's all about the
And
context.
that also doesn't mean that if that's the norm that you have to be that person either. Be
Correct.
true to yourself, but just being aware that if it is part of that culture and that is you, stay true to yourself and, be respectful at the same time.
I get lots of different responses to this, Ruth, and lots of different reactions to this. These
Uh-huh.
these quick fire questions. So it's always nice just to spend a couple of minutes just trying to understand your thought process around it because
Mm.
you struggled a couple of times there to go any direction. It was like, oh,
I know you really put me
depends,
on the spot.
depends. And I
I
used to
know.
use the word depends, and I removed it
Yep.
because we could say depends to all of them.
You could absolutely. And when you pushed me to go either way, there were things I was like, but there are like, situations you could and situations you can't. And for the most part, we'll go can't. So no, so.
Well, Rose, thank you very much for doing that. I really appreciate it. But now we've come to the part of the show where why we're all here is to hear about your worst job interview ever. For everybody that's listening, this is the moment where Ruth will either share her experience of being on the panel as an interviewer or as a candidate. And what we will take away from this is something, some type of lesson that we can bring forward into our day-to-day interviewing going forward from today. Okay, Ruth, so over to you. Tell us about your worst interview ever.
So I think I'm gonna go with the as the interviewer.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because this was actually two interview scenarios with the same person, if that makes sense. So,
Yeah.
the first time, this was again for a youth work based role, and the first time, they'd filled in the application form, filled it in really well. They were shortlisted, really high marks and stuff, and says, right, we'll offer an interview to them. Now, I also happened to have known them from another context before, so I knew they could be a really good candidate for the organization and they could fit in culturally and all the rest. But I was trying to like set that bias aside and interview people based on the questions we were asking them in the interview. And that helped because we had three other people on the panel and
Mm-hmm.
they were able to take some of that bias away from me as well. So anyway, come to the interview day, he arrived and we'll go back to the whole what people wear thing because he arrived wearing a Bermuda shirt, Bermuda shorts,
Oh.
socks and sandals. His hair wasn't brushed, a bushy beard. It wasn't like brushed or anything. So it was looking a bit unkempt and a bit like he'd been dragged through the hedge backwards kind of thing. And like he was just kind of rocking up because maybe he had to do so many interviews for his job benefits or something, or his,
Uh-huh.
job seekers
Yeah.
benefits or whatever.
Yeah.
But I knew he wasn't. I knew he was there for the job. He was genuinely interested in the job because he put all this effort in the application form. So anyway, um, I I'd said to the other panel before they come in, look, just to be clear, I do know this guy from a previous life, and I just want to let you know before he comes in, and then he came in, and they all kind of looked at me like, you know him? What? We'll get into it later. And I was genuinely surprised at how he had turned up to the interview. And maybe going back to the idea of dressing appropriately for the role, he maybe thought this is more of a youth work kind of vibe or something.
Mm.
Um, Maybe, and I want to give him the benefit of the doubt on that. But I guess the bigger issues came out when we did the interview itself, because we were asking questions about, say, outreach to kids in the local community and getting them involved in programs in the youth centre and things like that. And he really struggled to answer the questions. Even though on paper, on the application form, he answered them phenomenally. When it came to actually answering them in person, he was almost like a deer in headlights. Um, and again, we were trying to give him a bit of space to, regroup and answer the question. So we'd say, yeah, okay, I understand that's what you're talking about, Kevin, for example. But what about this aspect of it? So we came back to the question again, trying to feed him the
Mm.
question to see if he would answer the question again, because he just hadn't in his answer already. Um, and he still didn't answer the question, so I had to move on to the next one. And it was the same with every question after. He wasn't really in the mind space for it to answer the questions of what was being asked. So we couldn't mark him very high on anything. So he didn't get the job, not because he didn't dress appropriately, but because he didn't answer the questions. Now, the dress
Yeah.
obviously didn't help leave a good impression because he applied for another job a few months later with the same organization. And one of my colleagues remembered, oh, he came here before. We're not interviewing him again. That was a waste of time. And I says, look, he did, to be fair, ask for feedback after the interview. We'd give him feedback. Let's give him a chance and
Mm-hmm.
see, if he's, learned from that experience to actually portray himself better. But you know what? If he's anything better, he must be amazing to actually get this job because he'd set a really low bar the first time round.
Yeah.
So he came to the next interview, and this time he did have the suit and the tie, and the hair was all cut, and the beard was trimmed, and he was the complete polar opposite in terms of what he looked like at the first interview. Um, so we're like, right, okay, well, he's taken on the dressing a bit more professionally on board, but at the same time, it's maybe not appropriate to youth work role. So it could just be that you turn up with a shirt and a jacket and look a bit
Yes.
smart
Yes.
casual as a guy. Um, I'm not even getting into what girls are wearing, but yeah, smart casual could be really useful for him. But he came with a shirt and the tie and the hair was done, and he had a briefcase as well. So he was coming in looking like he was ready to be chief executive of something. Um, but we interviewed him, and he was a bit more relaxed this time. He did pause before answering questions to kind of gather and reflect what the question was asking, but he still didn't answer what the question was fully asking. He didn't really understand what was being said, or um, and maybe in his head he was having a bit of a panic still and just trying to look good on the outside, but still
Yeah.
he wasn't able to answer the questions, even though again he had done it really well on paper. Um, And I know from a previous life as well that he was really good at that job and doing it in other contexts and seeing him in action, and he would have been a great asset to the team. But we
Yeah.
couldn't offer him the job because he wasn't able to portray his experience or his knowledge or his skills or all of those things. And I asked him after that interview, did he want more feedback? And he says, no, I'm done. I don't want to hear anymore. And I can understand that too. And
Yeah.
I felt for him, I really did. I was quite gutted for him. I was gutted for us too because I knew he would have been, once he got into the job and got his hands on doing it, he could have been amazing. But articulating that in the interview was a really hard thing for him and a really hard thing for me to watch.
Yeah, I'm sure it was because you knew of him, you knew that he could actually do the role and he would probably be very good within the role. But
Hmm.
again, in the same sense, removing that bias and removing the opportunity because you knew him and you were just treating him as the person you seen in front, you couldn't give
Mm,
him the role. And unfortunately, that's the unfortunate thing about interviews is that you have to judge what you see on the day
mm,
to be fair to everybody.
hmm
But it's equally unfair to everybody as well because you could be the best person for the role, the most skillful person, the person with the most experience, and yet not get it because you can't communicate that. And in my head,
for whatever reason. I mean, it could even be a
yeah,
bad day for them. Something could have happened prior to the interview, or even just nerves. They don't cope well with nerves. So there could have been all sorts of things going on underneath that. A bit like the interview I alluded to earlier, arriving and I couldn't see because I had drops in my eyes and I couldn't see where I was walking into the interview. I nearly like grabbed someone's arm instead of shaking their hand. So you don't know what's happened before that interview to
yeah.
bring them to that point. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I know, but it's one of those moments, isn't it, in your
Mm,
interviewing life where you just think, okay, enough's enough. I can't go on anymore. I'll either learn how to be better at interviewing, or I will
mm,
go for jobs that potentially don't always need to be interviewed for,
yeah.
or if you do, they're a lot easier. Ruth, that's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. There's so much we have taken out of today's conversation, and I'm going to try and give the listeners a few takeaways from this. This is going to be very difficult because there was so much.
Okay.
All
Oh,
right.
really?
Yes, there was so much. It was so good. And thank you for it all. So you're really challenging me today. So the very first thing that I want all the listeners to take away is about the timekeeping. Too early is just as bad in some people's eyes as being too late or late for
Hmm.
that matter. And it boils down to timekeeping and poor timekeeping. So if you're wanting to give a good first impression, leave about 15 minutes before, not leave the home, but have about 15 minutes before you arrive at the place. If you're there 45 minutes, that's fine. Just sit in the car, go to a coffee shop, take a dander around the shops. Just stay out of the way until about 15 minutes beforehand. That'll give you some
But
time to get in.
also, in that time frame, do something that's going to calm your nerves and steady you before you go in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
Sorry
the
to interrupt
second,
you.
oh no, please add to it. And the second thing is being appropriately dressed with the emphasis on the word appropriate. Look at all of the social media, reach out to people who work there, reach out to the HR department, have a look on their website. They will more than likely tell you how they would want you to dress because they'll put photos on of how people should be dressing within their organization. And they will not put inappropriately dressed people on if that's not what they want. So have a look and then just make that a little bit more shiny. So if it's business casual for a gentleman, for a guy, maybe it's just a shirt and a pair of chinos and shoes. Well, maybe it's a jacket you add on top of that. And that's just that added little bit because you've made an effort to turn up to the interview. And again, this is all about behaviors. If you're making the effort to turn up to the interview like that, you're going to make the effort within the job role as well. And the third thing is go the extra mile because you really stand out. You really stand out from the crowd. That person that brought the folder with all the different bits and pieces and able to refer back to them. And on page 5, which meant they knew what was on that page. They knew how to direct that. And it leaves a really lovely, lovely impression that that lasts forever. Because you're talking about this now, Ruth, and that could have happened, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 years ago. But you still remember that because it made a really good impression with you. So, Ruth, this has been absolutely fantastic today, and I really appreciate your time and coming on. So, if our listeners want to reach out to you, Ruth, where can they reach out to you?
Yeah, so my name is Ruth and my business is Ruthless Media. So if you search ruthlessmedia.co.uk, you'll find my website. It has all my social links there as well. And basically what I do is social media advertising and training and coaching, mentoring. So helping people to do the best they can on social media, but my focus is really paid advertising. So yeah, even if you want a bit of confidence to like portray yourself better online or whatever as well, and thinking about self branding and all the rest of it. I'm always good at helping people to feel a bit more confident in themselves and what they can share about themselves there too, which might also lean into like application forms and interviews and all too, Kev.
Absolutely, it certainly does. It certainly does, and
Uh-huh.
I'll be keeping that in mind, Ruth. Ruth, thank you very much again. It has been an absolute pleasure. We are going to take so much away from today. So
It has been so much fun. Thank you for having me on the show.
it's been our pleasure. Thank you. And all the very best, Ruth.
Thank you.
For more details about our guest, or if you would like to be a guest, go to www.interviewskillscoach.co.uk/my-worst-interview-ever, or find us on Facebook or LinkedIn. And remember, on the other side of a successful interview is the life you deserve.